Hello, everyone. This is Stacie Pazura, your host for this series. This is Countdown to the USA presidential election. We are very close to this, what many will call life-changing election. The country is at an absolutely pivotal point. There is a great divide among the American people with very differing beliefs. Where certain issues are important to some and certain issues are not important to others. So there's really a reflection that is going on right now in this country, and a decision point where we really are being called to decide, where do we want this country, what do we want this country to be? Where do we want it to head? What are we going to do about it? What are the issues that we're dealing with? You know, this country is founded on a creed, which is, we are a country that is of the people, for the people, or by the people, of the people, and for the people. And at this state in time, I observe that not everyone can truly relate to this. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty because of the divide. It almost seems as if communication between these polarities of the country has become arrested. So it's been very challenging to deal with some of the current issues that we're dealing with as a country. First and foremost, we have this pandemic that began in January and has taken quite a toll around the planet, but particularly within the USA, which is supposed to be the leading developed country. And yet last stat that I heard is, we're 5% of the global population, and yet we account for 20% of coronavirus infections. And so there's a lot of questioning in the public right now as to how could this be, and what have we done? What do we need to do? This is one thing that's weighing on all of the American people. It's a collective concern. It's also having a very extreme impact on our economy and jobs. There's record numbers of jobs lost right now. There are people who don't know how they're going to make it. The issue of healthcare is of paramount concern right now to the American people. The Affordable Care Act is in question, and we really don't have a lot of clarity about other options. And so there's, and then we have the wealth gap. We have the issue of racial justice and the systemic injustices that have been a part of our history and are embedded in our fabric right now, and which, there's a rising up where we want these things to change. We want to reach for that creed that all men are created equal. That's what the United States is about. It's about a population of diversity, of immigrants, of sharing, of making the effort and finding your dream. And right now we are in a government which some may argue is not exactly supporting that. Going back to the wealth gap, it seems the government right now kind of seems to favor those with wealth and privilege. And there are so many countless people who are being left behind and with no hope of catching up. So we also have the crisis of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just a legendary Supreme Court justice who recently lost her life and is now being replaced in a very rushed fashion, which will tilt the courts to a conservative 6-3 leaning. So there are so many things at stake, and we have a really great panel of astrologers today to provide some insights to maybe help us to objectify and step back and look at the symbols, look at the dynamics that we are facing together. We've got Daniel Fiverson, we've got Sue Hillyard, Mitch Lewis, Michaela Villiers-Kendall, and Ari Moshe Wolfe. So I want to go ahead and start with you, Daniel. What do you have to share with us today?
Thank you, Stacie. I want to thank you and Linda personally, you know, for having created this amazing space. So thank you so much for organizing this and putting it together. Let me close it up here. So, you know, I agree with every single thing that you said. You've delineated and everything that we've witnessed and what we're suffering so well. For most of us, this has become a psychosomatic experience that probably will linger for some time to come. But we have to remember that symptoms are an attempt of the body to heal. So, especially when we feel pain. So in the immediate case that's up for discussion, we're talking about symptoms in the body politic. My moon is conjunct Eris in my 8th house. It's trining, they're both trining Pluto in my 12th house. So naturally I've gravitated towards a rogue version of the US chart. I don't want to take a lot of time today to go through it. You can read my notes here, and I've written a book about it, and plus I've done 2 Zooms. But this is a chart that was actually 1 year earlier for the date when the Second Continental Congress passed acts to create a standing army and to bear arms offensively against Britain, and they hired George Washington as commander-in-chief. And from my perspective, this was really the birth point of the United States. And, you know, be happy to discuss any of this in the Q&A later. I don't want to take a lot of time from it, but this is the chart that I use. Basically, you know, if we look at the most popular charts, you know, just for reference, the outer planets are all pretty much in the same place. The only difference is the timing. What I have discerned from this declaration of war chart is that the U.S. Pluto return, the U.S. Neptune opposition are already active. And I kind of challenge anybody to tell me that this is wrong. I mean, this is clearly observation and correlation. It's clearly the most intense period of history that I have lived through, and I go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis and before. So we've had a lot that's happened in the last 40 or 50 years, but nothing like this. To me, this is a clear indication of these major outer planet returns and oppositions that are occurring for our country and clearly affecting all of us. We'll see a little bit later. I'm not going to do a whole delineation of this chart, but at the election next week, in 10 days, there are 51 partile conjunctions and aspects between the transits that day and the U.S. chart. So according to this chart, we're going to have 3 conjunctions. The first one comes up in February. It's only 2 months away, and then it'll be followed by 2 more as Pluto turns to retrograde in July, and then they both meet up direct again at the end of the year, Christmas of next year. So this is basically the platform that I want to talk about today. So this is a bi-wheel, and we've got the election November 3rd on the outer wheel. We have the declaration of war chart on the inner wheel. And you can see that on election day, we've got a cardinal T-square as Pluto and Saturn not only conjoin, quote, natal Pluto in the US chart, but they form a very, very close T-square with the moon, with Eris also transiting opposite the US moon. This is significant from lots of different directions. First of all, we're seeing that, the conjunction's already well in orb, and Saturn is already there. Saturn's sitting right on top of Pluto. The squares to Eris, the squares to the moon, and the opposition from Eris to the moon are all about authoritarianism. This applies really intense negative pressures to our democratic process. The fourth house in Mundane astrology is democracy, in a sense, democracy versus authoritarianism. It's the people at large and the well-being of the people. And again, the moon is also the people, and it's in the first house here in Libra. Severe emotional pressures to the country and the people at large, again, and lawless at levels of government. And I don't mince any words when it comes to Eris, because Eris does not compromise, and Eris pulls no punches. Eris is a total choke chain reality that there's only one way this is going to go when she gets involved. The people at large are stressed and repressed and suppressed. This is Saturn and Pluto and Capricorn. This is the Capricorn energy. And there's absolutely chaotic public and official behavior. The moon is the ruler of the 10th house. The 10th house, again, in mundane astrology, is the president. It's interesting that the moon is not only the people, but it's also the president. It's quite an intense configuration. So where this plays out, as I said, is going to be a democracy versus authoritarianism. It's what we're facing head on. And also it involves foreign relations, because we've got the 7th house in play, and that is, those are our foreign allies. I think that it may be Donald Trump's ally. It's probably our enemy. It probably more belongs in the 11th or 12th house, but here is 7th house, and there's definitely a lot of involvement of other foreign agents. And the T-square is generating tremendous public outrage, insurrection. I use the revolution word, and I use it without any conditions on it. It's really my belief that the election certainly is a critical date, but I think that what's going to happen after the election is going to have much greater impact or as much impact perhaps as the election itself. It really remains to be seen how this is all going to play out. I am not anticipating a smooth transfer of power by any stretch of the imagination. I don't really believe that he's going to do the banana republic dictator thing and flee the country. I think it's going to go down differently. And unfortunately, I have this sense that no matter which way it goes, there's going to be outrage from the side that just didn't win. We're looking at a disruption of the democratic process, a total political power shift, perhaps, eruption of repressed anger, a very volatile election. And we've seen all these things already. Great potential for disruption to the economy, threat of war. Who knows what kind of dirty tricks will get played in order to maintain his White House residency. Domestic and foreign terrorism and intervention, as I said. I have to include a nuclear event because we're talking about Pluto here, and the underworld. It's also Pluto. I mean, he's surrounded by gangsters. Again, I can't soften my tone towards him, and drastic and chaotic changes to the American way of life. So this is really what I'm foreseeing, and my overview of this, just to throw some bread on the waters, is that these are homeopathic remedies. COVID, Donald Trump, there's a homeopathic process that's unfolding here. Like heals like, and we are being healed of, if not centuries, if not millennia, of toxic human behavior, patriarchy. We know all the words, the xenophobia, it's all coming out in the wash, and he is drawing it out. I mean, none of us are happy with him. None of us are happy with what's been going on, but clearly things have got to change, and they're not going to change by things going on as usual, is business as usual. So that's pretty much what I've got for this portion of what I have to say.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, I have to agree with you. I also share the sense that that the real uprise is going to happen after the election, because there will be a significant portion of the population who are going to feel that just completely disillusioned and cheated. It just, you can already see it. So what would your advice be for us to consciously integrate this T-square between Pluto, the moon, and Mercury?
Well, I think we have to start first with all the Capricorn energy that's out there. Capricorn is at Earth. We have to ground ourselves. We have to come back to what really is important in our lives. Uranus is playing a really significant role in Taurus, also in an Earth sign, showing us what's essential, showing us what we clearly need to survive, what we need to hold on to, what we need to let go of. Pluto. We need to come back to the moment. We need to be in the moment. We need to be, we need to actually come back to our families and our friends who are family, do the Cancer leg of this T-square, go to the open arm in this T-square, and nurture ourselves and nurture those around us, and, focus, like I say, stay in the moment, focus on the things that we really love, focus on the people in our lives that we love and are important to us. That's our normalcy, though. That's the thread, the core that will survive whatever comes. Those things can't ever be taken away. That's where we have to ground ourselves and to just recognize what we're moving through. And the other piece of this that I haven't mentioned, though I've talked about it for actually a couple of years now, is Pallas weaving her way through this Capricorn stellium. She sees the big picture. She has strategy. She enables us to understand what the big picture looks like, so we can kind of fit the little pieces together and deal with them. That's what we have to do. We have to see where this is going, where it's been, and then we'll understand where we are.
Oh, I so agree with that. Your advice to just be present and to deal with each other on the basis of our humanity, just to concentrate on the things that we love. Because I'll tell you, I've got a lot of Trump supporting family members and I'm not on that side. But we can, if we're present in the moment, it doesn't matter if this person's a Trump supporter and I'm a Biden supporter or an otherwise supporter, whatever. Those things just get suspended, and it's not important. It comes back down to the natural universal laws of what connects us as human beings. And so I really appreciate that advice, that we really be conscious about staying present in the moment and being able to relate, and therefore being able to listen and hear each other.
Yeah, we have to remember that we are going to have to live with each other after this election is over. That's Amen. The whole point. That's the whole point of this. We are so polarized, and somehow we have to synthesize. We have to find some middle ground, and just accept each other for who we are as we are, without all the venom.
Absolutely, and no one's going to do it except for ourselves. So it's on all of us to make that happen.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, Daniel. That was fabulous. And next, we're going to move to Sue Hillyard. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks, Stacie. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So I've been watching, over time, I've been watching a number of asteroids. And it seems to me that they tend to flesh out the details of the planetary picture, that in question. So I am starting, let's see, with what seems to be a defining moment for this presidency, and that is the day that Trump tweeted he had contracted COVID-19 after 9 months of denials, inactions, and other specific actions reflecting the hubris of his administration regarding the virus and the resulting pandemic. And as a result of these actions, his wife and teenage son were also infected. That day, asteroid Hygeia, which talks about health, was conjunct 12th house natal asteroid Atlantis, which among other things speaks of hubris. Right here is Atlantis. And was also conjunct his progressed midheaven, right here. Here's Hygeia. You can see that natal asteroid Hybris, also regarding hubris, is a few degrees away from Atlantis, also in the 12th house here. And transiting asteroid Karma had recently gone over these points and was exactly conjunct progressed Pluto, right here. Transiting asteroid Atlantis was exactly conjunct progressed Atlantis near his Leo ascendant, which was being exactly touched by transiting Venus, right here in Leo. And Venus is the planet that Aaron Sullivan has associated with the virus. And transiting minor planet Ceres, who was slowing down to turn direct, was over here, opposite to that Venus. The transiting North Node was exactly conjunct his 10th house Gemini Sun. Transiting Saturn exactly opposite his natal Venus, here. And Venus rules his midheaven and 3rd house. Transiting asteroid Hybris, again, about hubris, down here, conjunct almost exactly his, almost to the minute, his 4th house moon in Sagittarius. And asteroid Coronis was opposite his progressed Juno. There's asteroid Coronis, opposite progressed Juno down here, pulling his family into the health mix. Transiting Sun had been conjunct both his natal and progressed Neptune in the days coming up to this. And that included the super spreader event introducing his SCOTUS nominee, where numerous members of his administration were also infected. So the next day was the Mars-Eris conjunction with Mars retrograde. So here's another chart illustrating some of the gnarly transits he's gone through this year. That Mars-Eris conjunction right here was square his natal Saturn-Venus, opposite progressed Jupiter, and square transiting Saturn. Transiting Mercury and Uranus, there's Uranus up here, Mercury down here, we're approaching their first opposition and forming a square to his natal Pluto over here. Now here's a first glance at some asteroids that I've been using around the election chart set for Washington, D.C. when the polls open, with Pluto about to return to the minute of January's Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees Capricorn, 47 minutes. Interestingly, asteroid Arizona down here is also conjunct that same point within a minute, suggesting to me that this state may factor into the election. Mercury is stationary here, and will turn direct early afternoon on the East Coast on election day. Asteroids Coronis and Pan are in the 6th house over here, opposite Mercury and square Pluto, indicating the pandemic as a possible factor playing into the election. Here's Arizona's statehood chart with transiting Pluto square their nodes. So here's transiting Pluto, and their nodes are right here in Aries and Libra, with transiting Eris right on their north node, Mars going across it 3 times. And stationing Mercury is very close to their north node, right here. Transiting asteroid Hygeia in the 6th is opposite natal Mercury and Hygeia over here, echoing again health concerns as a possible issue. Chaos is conjunct the vertex in this chart for the US election day. So, sorry, I didn't mark it, and it's over here. Chaos is in, oh, sorry, Chaos is in Gemini. And the vertex is right here in the 8th house. This chart is, again, cast for Washington, D.C. at 7 o'clock in the morning when the polls open on the East Coast. Mercury is stationary and turns direct that day, so it will not be moving much for a few days. This could indicate that we will not have a clear winner immediately, or that the results will be called into question. Asteroid Abundantia, signifying abundance, is in the 1st degree of Aquarius, right here. In anticipation of the coming conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, so hopefully justice will prevail. And the previous day, on November 2nd, the asteroid Arizona will have been conjunct Pluto at 22 degrees Capricorn, 42 minutes. And as I mentioned, very close to the January conjunction point. And the day after the election, Arizona will be exactly conjunct that Saturn-Pluto conjunction to the minute, again suggesting to me that this state could somehow figure into the US presidential election. Arizona has historically been a Republican voting or red state. However, recently Democrats have started winning key Arizona races in Congress. Democratic voting states are termed blue ones, and because more Arizonans are voting Democratic, the state is now said to be a purple one due to the shift toward blue. It will be interesting to see if there's any correlation with this asteroid in the election, especially with regard to their statehood chart, having this transiting asteroid conjunct transiting Pluto in a square to their lunar nodes. Now here's Joe Biden's transits on the day of the election. Stationing Mercury will make a tight T-square with his natal Jupiter at 25 degrees Cancer and progressed Mercury at 25 degrees Capricorn. Mercury rules his midheaven and 7th house. Down here, Caraclo is also with transiting Saturn. And Caracalla was Chiron's wife and is known for holding space for healing to occur. Transiting Ceres recently stationed direct within a degree of his Pisces South Node. Here. Okay. Sorry. Transiting Venus is conjunct natal asteroid Karma in the 10th house up here. Here's Venus and his Karma. Okay, and Donald Trump's election day transits include a very exact opposition of transiting Neptune opposite his progressed moon. So here is his progressed moon in the 1st house, transiting Neptune here. And they're both square to his nodal axis and his sun and moon. He's in the midst of a lunar return, which is pretty exact on this day. His progressed north node is conjunct natal Uranus with transiting Uranus square natal Hybris. Here's Uranus and natal Hybris right here. Again, speaking of hubris. And transiting Saturn will be opposite natal Venus, the ruler of his 3rd and 10th house. It's a lot, I know.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
And it's only an introduction. I mean, there's so much more. It's like it was hard for me to whittle down what exactly to talk about.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Honestly, the thing that really kind of piqued my interest is when you were talking about the conjunction of Hygeia and Atlantis when Donald Trump's tweet was disseminated about him being COVID positive. I really get that because, you know, Hygeia can represent some kind of miraculous cure, right? And then in Atlantis, the hubris aspect of it is a society that was so far advanced, it just felt like it was above natural law. And so the president did succumb to contracting the virus, but yet he seemed to come out with minimal discomfort. So I'm wondering, I can't remember the chart that you initially put up, but I wonder where Sag is coming into play, or Pisces or Neptune, where there has been, we haven't really completely been certain about the exact details of Trump's sickness, when he contracted this, how long he had been testing, and here he is putting out this message of, hey, I've been cured, I'm immune. I have this miraculous cure, and so you don't need coronavirus to dominate your life. That would be the hubris, right? And this is a factor that is really unsettling a lot of Americans, where people have lost loved ones, important loved ones. Many of them have not been able to say goodbye to their loved ones. So I don't know, what do you think, Sue, about this?
Well, yeah, I agree, and it just seems like that there's so much hubris and just so much, you know, I can't even think of the word now, that, you know, where double meanings, double messages, mixed messages, you know, do as I say, not as I do, you know, and it's so confusing. And that speaks to the Neptune, you know, coming to a square to the nodes as well, and opposite his moon, Trump's moon, and square his nodes. I mean, he's just he's a showman who wants to win at any cost, and will say and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that, I mean, to me, that all of those asteroids, I mean, I've been watching Atlantis. I kind of identify with Atlantis, and I've been watching that. That's probably one of the first asteroids I started watching, and I have never seen it configured this intricately with, I mean, hubris, hybris, and Atlantis, and karma all together. You know, it's wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. It really is. And yeah, it's one of the major things that we're all dealing with. How bad was it really? Was he telling the truth about what he experienced? His major medical man at this point is Scott Atlas, who is a radiologist, not someone who's in the infectious disease arena, who is really kind of gunning for herd immunity, which, you know, statisticians have said would take the lives of millions and millions of people in order to get there. And it just seems kind of like a helpless time where, you know, what do we do? What do we do? So anyway, I thank you for that. That was very interesting. A lot. I'll have to review all of that and take it all in.
Yeah, I'll flesh it out as we go along.
Great. Yes, we'll be hearing from you again today. Okay, so next we have Mitch Lewis. Welcome, Mitch.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me. Am I up there? I can't tell.
Yes, you are.
Okay. First of all, you guys are great. I love listening to everybody's opinion. I chose to simplify and strip down my charts. For example, I'm gonna start screen sharing. Oh, well. Okay. Daniel, I loved your interpretation of America's chart. I think it was great. I use what we usually refer to as the Sibley chart, and in fact had come up with the pretty much the same ascendant long before I ever heard of Sibley. And the reasons are very simple. I'm not going to also spend a lot of time getting into the discussion of whether this is America's right chart or if it's the Gemini ascendant, which I've never believed for a second. For one thing, the concept of manifest destiny that states that it is God's will that America grow to the absolute extent that the landmass would allow. There is only one sign in the zodiac that would think that way, and that's Sagittarius. So I'm sure that we have a Sag rising. We also invented the cowboy, which is what Sagittarius is all about. And America, just to go over this very briefly, America has a dual personality like many of us do. And the more we are incarnate lifetime after lifetime, the more complex we become. We have 4 planets in Cancer, a very conservative sign. We have Saturn in its exaltation and accidentally by house placement in its rulership. We have a Sun-Saturn square. These are all very conservative points. However, we have an Aquarius moon and a Sagittarius ascendant, very progressive. So we are by nature a centrist country. If we pull too far to the left, the collective tends to pull us back to the middle. If we pull too far to the right, we tend to be pulled back into the middle. In 1968, which was a terrible year for so many reasons, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, etc. As the 60s and the Vietnam War was tearing the country apart, we elected Richard Milhous Nixon twice. As I understand, his second term didn't turn out so well, but look it up in history. So we are a country of 2 different personalities. And one of the aspects that many astrologers miss, they're conscious of it, but they don't seem to focus on it, is we have Mars in a very close square to Neptune. This is fear. This is a fearful country. We allowed McCarthyism to take over on nothing more than innuendo. And we have allowed Donald Trump to do the same thing. And I don't want to get into the politics of the election too much, because there are many people who study astrology who don't necessarily agree with our politics. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to look at, of course, we know Donald Trump's chart, and this is the birth time that I've always accepted. I find it to be completely accurate. Born with Regulus on the ascendant, the kingmaker. And again, I've stripped out the asteroids and a lot of other and fixed stars. It's too much. Sometimes it's just too much. So I like to simplify things. And Donald Trump was born under a full moon eclipse, the node being there, that's what makes it an eclipse. And Uranus conjunct the sun and opposing the moon, and he is quite an explosive character. When you do comparative astrology, whether you're working with your clients or you're doing mundane astrology, or you're doing IBM's chart or nations, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Donald Trump's full moon sits exactly on America's Mars and squares the Neptune. Donald Trump taps into the fear of the collective in America. That is the only way that he could have won this presidency. He did not do it through logic. He did not do it through compassion. He did it through fear. And in 2016, you know, the Buddhists have a concept: if you sit by a river and you come back the next day and you sit in the same place, you're sitting by a different river. The water has moved, the plants have moved, the animals have moved. It's a different river. And we're not in 2016 anymore, we're in 2020. So what Donald Trump was able to achieve in that 2016 election was based on America's Mars Neptune square. It was based on fear. And remember, Mars is the god of war. Neptune rules drugs. We've had a war on drugs since the beginning of our country. Marijuana has been illegal mostly because of William Randolph Hearst, who lost 600,000 acres to Pancho Villa when he took back land that Hearst had claimed, and so he created this war on it. And we had prohibition against alcohol for a generation, creating the mafia. This is Mars square Neptune. Okay, so that's what Donald Trump rings in America's collective. Joe Biden has Jupiter conjunct America's Mercury. Tell us a bedtime story, Uncle Joe. Give us some optimism. Give us something to believe in. And as I watched Joe Biden do his thing, he gave an amazing speech at Gettysburg, and I'm on Facebook and all the rest of that crap. We all are. And so, you know, if we connect, you'll see what we'll all see what each of us write about. But this is what Joe is bringing to the table: an optimistic point of view, a more gentle approach, certainly, than Donald Trump. Well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a very pivotal character, of course, in our ongoing comedy tragedy of America. Had an incredibly difficult chart. I mean, you know, look at this, the Venus square Saturn, Sun square Neptune. It's a terribly difficult chart. Paralyzed from his 30s with polio, went on to be elected 4 times. His moon sits on top of America's Jupiter. His Mercury sits on the top of America's moon. What was he most known for in the early days of his presidency was his fireside chats. The moon rules the public, Mercury rules communication. Here, his moon is on top of America's Mercury and Venus. So he also created a sense of optimism. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. We're going to get through this. Don't worry, it will be okay. So I see some comparisons between the way Franklin's chart, Roosevelt's chart sits on America's, and the way Biden's chart sits on America's. Now, of course, we've all looked at the aspects, whether you use the asteroids or not, but the aspects to each of our each of the players in this comedy. And as I always say, you know, I have some clients who are in show business and they're up for awards, and they say to me, well, they know just enough astrology to make themselves dangerous and a bit of a pain to us. They say, I should win the Grammy, shouldn't I? I mean, Jupiter's going into my 10th house and blah, 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 blah. And I explain to them, you've been nominated for a Grammy or an Oscar or an Emmy. Certainly, you've already won. 6 people get nominated out of the thousands that are in your field. Well, two people are running for the biggest job in the world, most powerful job in the world. Certainly, they are both going to have serious transits that are going to ring true during this. So of course, I use all of this. I did a webinar on the election. It's up on my website, if anybody would like to download it, where I go through all of the transits and I go through everything that I'm doing for you now. And as much as the transits are interesting, we know that Donald Trump has transiting Saturn in opposition to his Pluto and transiting Pluto in opposition to his Venus, or it's the other way around. He's got very, very difficult aspects on election day. There's no question about it. Does that mean that he's going to lose? Not necessarily. What I look for is a deeper sense of meaning in what's going on underneath it all. Now, here's Inauguration Day.
Sorry.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Coronavirus. We have Mars conjunct Uranus, almost exact, in square to the Sun, Saturn, and Jupiter. This is going to be a very explosive day. No matter who wins this presidency, there's going to be a lot, as Daniel pointed out, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of animosity in there. It's not going away. And it's not going to go away on election day all of a sudden. But many people who voted for Trump, and I also have many friends and clients who back Trump, and they say, we felt alienated. We didn't have anybody that we felt was working for us. And so we went in a direction that seemed different, and God knows it's different. Now, what seems to be happening is that, based on the polls, and you know you can't trust the polls, a lot of people are redefining what they want. The river has moved. What worked in 2016 isn't going to work in 2020. I've been saying for a long time, podcasts on radio and my newsletters, lectures, blah, 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 that Biden is going to win, and he's going to win bigly, as Donald Trump would like to say. Biden wins this election. Is there going to be contentions? Of course there's going to be. But I have very little doubt, and I disagree with a lot of the astrologers out there, which is one of the reasons why we all get together, so we can disagree. I think the fact that Mercury is going direct on election day implies that we will know. Maybe not exactly on election day, but that we will know much sooner than many people think we're going to. I think we're going to see some rather surprising events occurring on election day. If Joe Biden wins Florida, game's over. If he wins Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, game's over. Now, if there are surprises, and I could be surprised too, as my brother's also an astrologer, and he once said, it doesn't even matter if you're right in your predictions. As long as you're willing to continue to predict, people will listen to you. I think that's kind of an iffy concept, but the point is that everything that I'm looking at in all of the charts, and again, in 10 minutes, I can't go through what I did in a 2-hour webinar. But there are many, many charts that I look at. Here's America in Inauguration Day, and Donald Trump on Election Day. Here's the Saturn opposite his Venus, and here's the Pluto opposite his Saturn, and the Uranus coming up to the square to his Pluto, and Neptune squaring his Uranus, and all of this stuff. This does not look like a good chart. This looks like the chart of somebody who should be looking for a new place to live. And well, again, I don't want to get into the politics of it too much because it's too easy to slip into that. But I don't see anything in any of these charts that implies that Donald Trump gets reelected. His Inauguration Day, we can, again, because of time, I don't want to get into too many of these charts because there's just too much to pay attention to. But what happened? Oh, am I done? 1 minute, okay. All right, so just to tie this up, America's personality is what it is. We fluctuate. There is a reason why election day in America always falls in the sign of Scorpio. It gives us an opportunity every few years to make a major transformative change. And that is exactly what we are seeing now with all of it. Again, there's so much, as we all know, it's much too much to cover in 10 minutes. But I believe we are changing, even on election day, the sun is in opposition to Uranus. We are changing governments. Joe Biden is going to win. And then, of course, as we all agree, that's when the work really starts. It's not on election day. Joe Biden is going to come in here after they're done counting the silverware in the White House. They're going to have to look at the books, and they're going to take a look, and they're going to go, oh my God, our country's bankrupt. What are we going to do? Then we get back to FDR's policy. Spend, spend, spend in order to rebuild the country. And that's what's going to happen. Anyway, lots more to talk about. We'll do it some other time. And I get another 10 minutes later so I can yak a little bit more.
Yes, that's right. You do. Thank you, Mitch. I'm really interested about that. His full moon in his natal chart squaring the USA, Mars, and Neptune, and how you pointed out how this is really channeling American fear and division. Can you see anything as it relates to racism, the racist issues that are coming up?
I think that America was, remember, Washington, Jefferson, even Ben Franklin had slaves. Yes, one generation should not judge another, because if you have not walked a mile in my moccasins, you do not know what my life is like. All of that is true, but there are flaws in the American system. We are seeing one of them right now with Amy Coney Barrett being put on the Supreme Court. There are flaws, there are problems. The Electoral College was only created because of racism. That was to appease the southern states. It is an outmoded form of government. It should be stripped. Supreme Court justices should not be or federal judges should not be a lifetime appointment. So there are a lot of problems that have to be dug up. And the Pluto return in America, as we all know, Pluto in the body, I do a lot of medical astrology. Pluto in the body rules any part of the body that eliminates waste. It rules the urethra, the colon, the sweat glands, even the tear ducts. This is a cleansing of the eyes. That's all Pluto's domain. In a horary chart, it rules garbage pails, toilets, garbage disposals, anything that does away with waste. So we are digging deep into what is wasteful in America and what needs to be. We have a virus in this country. It's not coronavirus, it's racism, it's xenophobia, it's sexism, it's all of this. And it's all based on fear. It's all based on Mars square Neptune. Oh my God, you're different than me. They didn't want the Irish in America, anything but the Irish. They didn't want Jews, they didn't want blacks, they didn't want Puerto Ricans, they don't want anything. Because we're afraid of what's different. If we don't get in and clean that out, America's in a lot of trouble. And the last place that you want to live is an empire that's crumbling. You did not want to live in Rome in the 400s. Believe me, and I was there. I remember from another lifetime. And so we're at a point now. We are really at a crossroads. If we deal with the Pluto return the way that it must be done, and we dig all of this out, and the only way that is going to happen right now is if one party gets a tremendous amount of power. Otherwise, this tug of war will continue, and the chasm will grow bigger and bigger, and nothing will get accomplished.
That was tremendous. Yes, yes, yes. That was great, Mitch. All very, 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 very clear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we're going to move on to Michaela Villiers-Kendall. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
There's a TV on in the background. Shall I turn it down and can you hear it or not? No, you can't.
I can't hear it, no.
That's all right then. I forgot to turn it off. Okay, so, right, so I thought oh no, which one? Yeah, that's it. So I thought I'd take it out to the very big picture here and bring it inwards. And taking it out to the great Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius that's happening on the December 1st solstice, 21st solstice. I set it for Washington, D.C., so it takes place at noon. So obviously in Aquarius, taking it to the big picture, we are in the middle of a shift, and I'm sure a lot of you know about the great shift, the shift into the new age, the precessional sun. So it takes place over a long, long time, as you probably know, but I won't go into all of that because there's not much time here. But there was a very big push into the new age, to the age of Aquarius in 2012, when you had the Mayan calendar and the solstice, the winter solstice ending, but that actually marked the precessional sun going into the dark rift in the Milky Way, as part of the entrance to a 4-year period when that would be a major push into the birthing of the new age. We're still in the birthing process. It takes a long, long time, but it was a major, it was called the Great Shift. And named the beginning of the Second Renaissance. So anyway, so that was in 2012, and of course Obama was re-elected in 2012, and then 4 years later, which was when the precessional sun was due to come out of the dark rift, that was 2016. So looking at the chart, so obviously this marks, and 2016, as we know, is when Trump was elected president. Trump does have a very fated chart. I thought so in 2016, when people were deciding when he was going to win. And I just thought that there was something very fated about the thing. And I'll go into the reasons for that after, but right now, talking about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 0 degrees Aquarius. So it's a major marker to the new age of Aquarius. And it happens on this winter solstice. That couldn't be bigger. And obviously it's right in the middle of the election. The election now, we're kicking off with the full moon in Taurus on November 1st. Opposite Uranus rules Aquarius. So Uranus is very figured in all of this. And it goes from there really, but it doesn't stop. It's like a roller coaster. It goes on, and as Mitchell just pointed out, come Inauguration Day, it's fireworks. I mean, it's. I was looking at the film The Music Man, which is a wonderful bit of Americana. It's one of my favorites from a kid. And there's a song in it called "You Got Trouble." Well, that just sums up what's happening, because what it says is you got trouble with a capital T that rhymes with P, and in this case stands for Trump. And it's going to be massive. So it's going to explode. I mean, you've got Uranus then. I mean, I'll go back to this chart, but obviously, as Mitchell just said, you have Uranus, Mars, and Daniel said it too. You've got Mars conjunct Uranus, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so right in the middle of it, we have this Aquarian chart that is Jupiter, very big in alchemy, and down the ages, Jupiter conjunct Saturn was always a major turning point. But this is the first of a trigon in air, and it is Aquarius, so it is a major marking point. So now is when we're really in the thick of it. It happens on the solstice, which is the black sun, they call it in alchemy, the Negrido, you could say. Well, the Negrido is, in psychology, as you probably know, is according to Jung, and it comes from the Gnostic texts as well. It comes from alchemy. It's the dark soul. It's the dark night of the soul. It's the time when the shadow is confronted. in psychology. It is when all the ingredients are in the pot and they're stirring in the cauldron and they're decomposing. So this isn't just America's, America is the focal point, because America is a very Aquarian country, and its nodes, South Node in Aquarius, North Node in Leo, Moon in Aquarius, but the revolution took place when Uranus was discovered, etc. So America was founded under an Aquarian banner. And so Aquarian really, America leads the way into the age of Aquarius, and that makes perfect sense, as though it was always destined to do it. And so here we are, it is leading the way. But there is a shadow, and it's not just America's shadow, it's the world's shadow. It's the whole humanity has been screwed up for thousands of years. And so this age is got to change that. It is going to change it, but it's a process, and it's a process of nigredo. It's a process of disintegration first. So Saturn and Pluto, the great conjunction at the start of the years, shows that nigredo process, the breaking down, the Saturn and Pluto, the decomposition, the journey down to hell, down to the underground. And that's where we are. And so now, perfect, we kick off on a a Taurus full moon, Sun in Scorpio, November 1st, opposite Uranus. So we are on our way, we're on the roller coaster, and we're going down. And we are going down, and we know it, but it is part of the process that we have to do it. It's the world's process. We just follow America. And America is the leader and will continue, I believe, to be the leader in the new age. China, of course, is up there vying, and it's very interesting how the founding fathers picked. Of course, they picked the date of the inauguration, the sun, 0 degrees Aquarius. That wasn't a coincidence. Even China chooses their new moon every year to be in the early degrees of Aquarius. And all this is known for centuries. So they know what they're doing. And amazingly, of course, this year, China's new moon fell on the time when the whole world suddenly knew about coronavirus, 24th of January. The synchronicities are quite amazing, but that's astrology, isn't it? So anyway, so there we are with the 21st of December. I don't think there's anything else to say about that at the moment, so I'll go on because I'll run out of time. So to the next one, which is, so I just wanted to point out the 2016 chart. And obviously this is when Trump was elected. This is set for the time when actually when the results were announced. And amazingly, and I did notice that at the time, Mars actually went into Aquarius. It was at 0 degrees Aquarius when it was actually announced. It made its ingress right then. So, that's a major marker. And the other thing that was happening then, what was it? Oh yeah, Saturn. Yeah. So, which one have I got? Oh, that's the inauguration. Okay. No, it's the 2016 9th of November chart. I don't know if that's number 2. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, no, yeah, that's it. So anyway, so there you are. You can see Mars is right on the cusp of Aquarius, making that T-square as well. Whoa. So, and the North Node right on the ascendant. As I said, it's just uncanny, and a marker. And who is the candidate would cause the most upheaval, because the alchemy is about upheaval. The nigredo requires a catalyst. It requires everything being thrown up into the air, into disintegration, and Trump's the ideal candidate, I think, with a fate to do it. He's a catalyst. So anyway, so moving quickly ahead because I don't want to take up too much time. So to the inauguration, I think is the next one. Inauguration, yeah. And that's number 3. That's, yeah, I'm sorry, it's confusing because they're all the same color. I usually have different colors to work with. And these are very simplistic charts, I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so that's the inauguration. Now, again, obviously you've got the sun in Aquarius, as usual, on the 20th of January every year. So it's picking up that Mars as well. But you've got Saturn. The other thing noticeable was Saturn at 23 degrees Sagittarius, which is conjunct Trump's lunar eclipse, his moon at 21 degrees. And that might not seem fortuitous, but then it's all that responsibility. It's sort of the fate. It's taking on the mantle of this, and it's a lot of responsibility. So there you go.
Thank you, Michaela.
Yay.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in all of the Aquarian dynamics that you've pulled out, and it really was quite a surprise when Donald Trump won in the last election series. No one expected it. I think in this election, people are really careful not to get too confident. And I agree with what you're saying about the dark night of the soul, where, you know, this is, all of these transits are really pointing to a time of a need to deeply introspect on who we are, what we're doing, who's it fair for, who is it not fair for, how do we envision ourselves, are we living up to the vision of every man, well, human is created equal, or are we saying that certain social groups are superior and others are inferior? And this is really where the rubber meets the road, where really I see the spirit in America is striving for what we say we want to be, which is, let's celebrate diversity. You know, let's find out how to integrate everything so that everyone has an equal chance. That may sound idealistic, and there are other points of view.
That's
where
Aquarius, yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciated all of those thoughts. Thank you so much, Michaela.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have Ari Moshe Wolfe. Welcome, Ari. Hi.
There we go. Hi, everyone. So what I want to share is actually taking a little bit of a step back away from the specifics of this election and just offer some perspective on some soul lessons and truths that are very awake right now, but they're always true. Every 4 years, we have this experience in the United States where there's a lot of intensity, a lot of focus, a lot of concentration on who's going to become the president. And of course, there are direct consequences to that. And the reality of the Senate and the Congress and all these things have a lot of importance. And it's something I'm deeply interested in. But I want to offer this perspective that there is something called truth, the will of God, the will of nature, something that is unshakably, undeniably, eternally true. And this truth is not something that we're going to work really hard and one day achieve the perfect society, the perfect country, the perfect nation, where it's like, all we do is love and care for each other. This truth is in our own practice, something that we are learning to refer to as what is. And we are learning, and this is a Neptunian principle. Of course, right now we have Neptune squaring the nodes. So of course, there couldn't be a stronger time where the ideological confrontations and disagreements and disillusionment around beliefs and this insecurity leading us to defend and hold on to our convictions and our ideas. And the Neptunian lesson for all of us is referring to something that's beyond the world, something that we can depend upon, that isn't in form, isn't in a condition. We learn this in a relationship. You know, if you're with someone and they're acting in a way that you don't like, or for a moment they're not in their best behavior, the Neptunian practice is to not say, well, this is who you are and I'm identifying you as this because in a temporal way right now you're being mean to me, so I'm going to stop loving you. The practice with Neptune is referencing unconditional love and seeing everything from the point of view of what it truly is. And that doesn't mean being naive or being taken advantage of, but there's a peace that we learn with Neptune. There's a deep, deep, deep peace and wellness that comes as we realize that in our own innocent perception, in our own attunement and faith in what's inherently true, regardless of what's appearing, regardless of what things seem to be, we give ourselves the gift of peace. Like we give ourselves the gift of living freely, living joyfully, living lovingly, when we see with the eyes of love, when we see through the eyes of peace and forgiveness. And when we practice the knowledge that we're inherently safe, and that it's the will of God for us to know that we are loved, to know that we are safe, to know that we are held, to know that all is well. And that's the whole thing with Neptune. I mean, we don't go there all the time because the world seems so convincing, doesn't it? This whole thing looks so real. And again, I'm like super interested in it. When I wash my dishes, it's often a question of, do I listen to one of my spiritual teachers or do I listen to Trevor Noah or one of the other political shows that I enjoy? You know, and I love it. But there is this practice for us, for all of us on our journey, to bring our attention, to bring our reference beyond the world, beyond the conditions and the seeming importance of what's happening in the world. You know, it's like living in the world but not being of it, because it's going to pass. In 4 years, so whatever happened, it's going to pass, and we're going to have a whole new cycle. And in 400 years, we'll look back with this greater perspective and we'll see, oh, this is all a part of the journey. This is all a part of the unfolding. And the principle of faith says, whatever this is right now, whatever is unfolding, whatever, you know, it is between me and you, whatever it is between me and my country, whatever's happening on a legislative level, the truth, it's not going to go away. And so it's just a matter of evolutionary timing, right? Like, evil isn't going to win. Illusion isn't going to become more powerful than God. But we see that. We see the whole interesting part of this journey is we have these periods where Trump gets elected and all these horrible things happen. And we know in history that there's just this pattern of the darkness being very predominant. And so I feel it's really important for us while we're moving into this election. And I mean, I agree with a lot of the sentiment. I actually I agree with Mitch. I don't think this is going to be a very complicated, just in my own astrological intuitive sense of it, I don't think this is going to be a very complicated election day. I would not be surprised if Trump tried everything he could possibly do, probably post-election as well, to make it work for his favor. But given the currently the waxing Neptune square to the nodal axis, you can and this is not going to wane until I think February or something like that, or March. You can bet you that all the ways in which we've put absolute meaning and value and purpose and salvation in our presidential candidate, in flipping the Senate, and it doesn't matter like what your ideology is. Those who are Trump supporters, there are so many people out there that are seeing this as like a make it or break it thing. People will die to get Trump elected. People will die to get Trump not elected. And it's just worth slowing down and remembering that, one, the trick of this whole spiritual journey is that we're always going to find something worth believing in, something worth giving our absolute conviction towards, something that we feel is almost like more important than God, more important than the truth. And that the tendency, the potential for that's always showing up in our lives. And two, during this particular transit, the healing is reorienting ourselves to the source of all things. But when we begin to lose our peace, especially if we're getting into conversations about right and wrong, and these really deep philosophical, intellectual conversations and debates, and just anytime that we're doing something in a way that leads us to feel that we need to sacrifice or martyr ourselves or take it for the cause, you know, where it's almost like the means equals the ends, we're forgetting that we are not the ones that are doing things here. We're not the ones that are affecting history. We're not the ones that are bringing healing to this planet. This is all coming from God. All things good, all things healing come from the source of all things. All things that are not simply come from the denial of all things. Fear, hate, these are not inherent conditions to life. Their existence is literally just dependent upon an underlying fear of God. It's an underlying fear of love. And so when we remember this, we can really reference this Neptune principle. Your will be done, and let me be an instrument for that. And we all have a role. And I think one thing that Neptune teaches us, when we, give our attention to seek the kingdom of heaven first and all else shall be provided for you, we're also shown, we're given our direction, we're given our holy function. And for some, that might be heavy in the politics. That might be, all the 10,000 things that humans can possibly do. But there's an expression, and you can see it in a politician when they're fulfilling their dharma. It's true. It's like you can really feel it in a soul when, wherever they're at on their journey, where their work is a true function, a true expression of playing out their dharma, doing what God is wanting to do through them. You can feel that, versus when you feel a person's coming from ego and kind of working out their own resistance and their own desires. Okay, so I'm going to start to wind down with this 1 minute warning. So you can really feel that quality when we're in that Neptunian world. I mean, in my opinion, Bernie Sanders, not perfectly, but in a very clear way, he has Neptune on the North Node in Virgo. And of course, he's not one of the main figures. He is indirectly, right, in what he's influenced, but he's not now running. But that's an example of a politician that I feel is more aligning with that Neptunian principle of being an agent. So this is my offering, my teaching, my blessing, especially as this Neptunian square continues. This is going to be a very interesting theme, especially once it passes the square and it begins to wane, is to practice aligning ourselves with the source of all things, to just continue to guide and teach us and show us where our own alignment, our own awakening links in with a greater collective evolution in our political experiences, in our world in general.
Thank you, Ari. You're lovely. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's I think a lot of us are really turning our thoughts to this question of, because we're all having our ideals and our illusions challenged at this moment. All of the things that we thought were true about humanity and about this collective, it's being completely challenged. And so what do? Do we give up hope? Or do we try to hide it, try to deny it? Right. Or do we go inside and be quiet and really try to attune to what this collective is moving into? What are we doing? And it's what Daniel was saying at the very beginning, being present in the moment is really how we do that, and focusing on the things that we all have in common. And at the same time, it really is a challenge because, you know, there are all these events, you know, part of politics, it's like there's this overall, you know, trying to be of service to the whole, and then there are details in how you be of service to the whole. And there's all these, you know, circumstances and factors that come into play, and so it's really quite a dance. So I don't know, do you have any further thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, just the disillusionment piece, you know, it's like I had faith in humanity. I had faith in, you know, everyone's lying. Who can I believe in? No political party is worth trusting. I don't like any of the, you know, all these things where it's like the world can disappoint us. And I see a lot of people dealing with that. It's like, well, I didn't really want Biden, or I didn't really want this, or it's like, this is not really the ideal system. I wish it wasn't the electoral, you know, the world's never going to satisfy us, and we can continue to do our work in the way that we're called to improve it. But I think this really does call us to find, to claim our wellness and our peace and our alignment with Creator's wish for us to be an agent before the world becomes its idealized thing that we're so hoping it would be, but are going to be always disappointed that it's not. It's to not wait for our peace, to not wait to step up into our role.
Yeah, and kind of just one other little point I want to make about all of that is I'm someone, I believe in prayer. I believe in prayer. I believe in focusing your emotions, your experience, your desires, your hopes, everything, the essence of everything that's within you, and channeling that to the entity that is in charge. And I believe that in spite of circumstances, because I have this saying, there's one thing the divine can do, and that is it can pull any string in the web. You just don't know. It's all an act of surrendering. And so, and I do believe that the divine does listen to all of the prayers that are coming out of so many hearts right now, you know, and so, yeah, we will see. We will
I
see.
may, there's this one teaching from A Course in Miracles that I love, which says the function of the Holy Spirit, which we can just say is just, you know, God, whatever, is to orchestrate time and space for the purposes of healing. And it's like, if we let go of our control of time and space, trying to make it work according to our own ego plan and say, I give it to you, you make this work, it allows something far beyond our own abilities to pull all the strings.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Indeed. That is perfect note to end on here. Okay, so now we're kind of going through round two. We're gonna come back to Daniel Fiverson. Are you here? Yes, here you are.
Yes, I'm here.
And now I won't be interrupting any of the speakers from this point forward. So go for it.
Am I sharing? Yes, no? Oh, I'm
Yep.
playing. Okay, here we go. All right, Ari, thank you so much. That was so incredibly beautiful, and you stole my thunder, so I don't know what I'm going to say for the next 10 minutes. It was beautiful. Thank you, man. That was great. I got to start with Abe Lincoln. I think he's probably, you know, one of the American figures we can all rally around, because he really portrays the best of what American culture has produced. And I'm gonna talk about Neptune here as well, because I think it is so incredibly important. And what I've realized as I work through this, you know, we're all focused on the Pluto return, but I think at the core of the Pluto return is this Neptune opposition. You are what you believe. We are our beliefs. Two people look at the same thing and see two entirely different things. And, you know, this is to a great degree is what we're up against, you know, politically here. Our vision is so diametrically opposed to each other, but yet we're all looking at the same thing. And I have to confess that, you know, to some degree, you know, not that I would ever vote for him or I could ever support what he has brought into the world, but I understand the angst and the anger and the frustration of the people who support him. It's, you know, I lived through the 60s. I really, you know, came into my own age in the 60s, and I'm a child of that time, and you know, all the thread of history that has occurred, you know, since then, that Mitch has alluded to, the, you know, Martin and Bobby and John and all that has happened, to me is a single thread, and you know, and it's hard to dismiss it. It's hard to think that, you know, there's not some machination behind it, but I'm gonna leave that for everybody else to, you know, kind of work on, because I do believe that the science is real. You know, 9/11, you know, affected the three states of New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, and the 5 boroughs of Manhattan, and it was a 3-day event. COVID is a little bit more wide spectrum than that, and you know, people are dying and people are getting sick. It's a whole different perspective. We have to deal with it differently. But yet, I can understand both sides of the aisle, not necessarily the Mitch McConnell thing, though. But at any rate, you know, what we're looking at is we have to realize that both of these events that I've discussed today, you know, are historically quite important, because the Pluto return, the first Pluto, you know, refers back to the American Revolution, where it all began. The reason it's so obfuscated for us is because it's the first time it's happened. We don't have a lot of objectivity about it, though. If we go back and look at the cycles, we'll realize it was the Reagan years and it was Manifest Destiny that Mitch referred to. You know, again, there's a clear thread of history. I'm a student of history. I believe, you know, that those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And I think, unfortunately, this is part of the problem of what we're going through right now. But the last opposition occurred in the years prior to the American Civil War. It was the last time that our country was as politically divided as it is. And what really is intensifying it this time is what Ari is talking about is, you know, we have a mutable cross here, because the nodes are not just, Neptune's not just opposing its natal position, but it is squaring the nodes. We've got some, you know, serious conflicts and serious energies that are just butting up against each other without any seeming ability to want to resolve, you know, peacefully. This is a cataclysmic polarity of beliefs in this opposition. Some people are waiting for the savior, some are martyrs. Some of us are saving themselves one way or another. You know, and I have to, you know, say that I'm afraid of the word God, because it's got so much baggage with it. It means so many different things. That I see Neptune and, you know, Jupiter. I see Pisces as a dual rulership, with Jupiter still as well. It's our connection to that which is our greater than ourselves. It is us. It's not something that's separate from us. It's something that's within us that we have perhaps denied or ignored or don't even know exists. But we are part of something much greater, and you know, it's what Jeffrey talked about. It's about the separation from source. It's the wave that rises up from the ocean and forgets that it's part of the ocean. And so Neptune is generating circumstances and a collective experiences for us that will make us realize that we are part of an ocean, that we're not separate waves. We can't just, you know, go off in our own direction, perhaps forever. At some point, we have to come back and touch base and you know, get regrounded. The emotional conflicts are creating an extreme clash of belief systems, and it's the most difficult part. It's what's driving all of this is these clash of beliefs and the egos and personal expressions, which are stretched to the limit by what we believe. And also this religious, you know, belief in divine judgment and retribution. We're also pushing back against religion to a great degree, because the churches have gotten themselves involved politically, and I won't get into it, but it came over on the Mayflower people. This isn't something new. It came over, you know, 400 years ago. We have to recognize that. And you know, we're dealing with skip steps. This is a core primary evolutionary astrology concept. As Neptune squares the nodes and applies to them, that the evolutionary need to synthesize this wide range of national beliefs, and how do we find the sweet spot between our individual expression and, you know, what's going to serve the common good. But we're gonna have to go through the narrows. We're gonna have to go through these difficult challenges that are gonna, you know, show us what it is that we have to learn. You know, and I'll, you know, put something else out there. And again, you know, I think some people will resist this kind of thinking. And excuse me for saying it, but, you know, if Joe Biden is elected and it's a smooth transition of power, what have we learned? What have we accomplished? What potential is there for anything to really change? And we have to come to terms with these crises. We know that we have that you know, it's a whole Virgo experience, which is the polarity to Neptune and Pisces. That we have to have these crises, these self-awareness realizations that something has to be worked on. We have to do the work. And what we're experiencing right now is going to literally force us to do the work. We don't have any choice. Again, it's a choiceless awareness. Where this is all going to play out, you know, in terms of our country is, you know, there are hidden agendas. We've got secret enemies, and I think some of us are also hoping that the prisons will be prominent again. This is all mundane astrology. We've seen all of the issues with the media and the press and fake news, and the intervention of foreign agents and Facebook and planting all these you know, these stories about Biden's son and Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's you know, on some level it's totally absurd, but people are believing it. And that's Neptune. It's the illusion versus the truth, but ultimate truth. And we're also, you know, this is also about the people at large, and democracy versus authoritarianism. It's where the same houses in the U.S. chart are under strain as, you know, from Pluto as Neptune. It's affecting the same areas of life. Certainly, the pandemic is going to be huge. We're actually all moving into the third wave. You know, here in New Mexico, we have gone from under 200 new cases statewide a day to over 800 yesterday. It's getting, you know, it's a little scary. I have to admit it. You know, who wants to go to the supermarket? So we're at a point of no return here. We have to deal with this, and we have to recognize the reality of it. The judicial system also, and, you know, I think this is where Donald Trump is hoping it's going to play out. They have created judgeships for over 200 federal judges in the past 4 years, and I think that's where he's putting his hope. But you know, I'm also seeing that one after another, these circuit court judges and the courts of appeals are not necessarily siding with Donald Trump. And Chief Justice John Roberts has also, you know, sided with the liberal sides of the court. So, you know, the Supreme Court has a life of its own. It is the one institution in our government that is not beholden to anybody. And there is something about the Supreme Court itself that changes and alters the members who sit on it. Earl Warren was a segregationist. He became one of the most progressive chief justices in U.S. history, and it's the effect of the court itself. So, you know, there's much more in play here that we're not aware of. There are invisible forces that are at work. You want to call it God or divine providence or, you know, source, or however you want to, you know, categorize it. It's happening. And we are part of that greater ocean, and the ocean itself is in motion. It's moving, and we're being carried by the tide. So we really need to recognize that I think the bottom line here is to realize that Neptune higher octave of Venus, we're talking about love, conditional love versus unconditional love. And we're talking about truth versus absolute truth. And this is where we're heading. This has all got to get sorted out one way or another. Our greatest hope is that we can accomplish it this time without a revolution, without a civil war. But who knows? I mean, we just have to be prepared for whatever's coming and accept it and surrender to it, and just find that peace within ourselves, that safe sanctuary that we all have within us, that will protect us and make us realize that this is bigger than us, and we cannot bend it just with our will or our beliefs or our opinions.
Amen to that. Fantastic. Oh, I'm in so much agreement with everything you shared. Okay, Sue Hillyard.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is share my screen and show you Biden's chart with the coming lunar eclipse. There we go. So Biden's midheaven has progressed to his first house. And just past progressed Hybris. Right here. Conjunct natal Juno in Sagittarius. The eclipse chart sun is in the first, conjunct them both, and the eclipse moon is in his 8th house, conjunct his natal Saturn, which rules his 2nd and 3rd houses. Transiting Mercury is conjunct his Sun-Venus conjunction in the 12th house, right here. That's stationary Mercury. And the minor planet Sedna is opposite them all. Sorry, Mercury's not stationary that day. This is later on. This is after at the lunar eclipse. In addition, transiting Hygeia is opposite progressed Sun up here. This is progressed Sun in Aquarius. And conjunct natal Hygeia right here, and square natal Hybris. Transiting Atlantis is conjunct his midheaven right here, and is also being squared by the transiting lunar nodes. His natal Atlantis, also in the 9th, here, is conjunct his Chiron and Trump's ascendant. His progressed Chiron is conjunct Trump's Mars. Transiting asteroid Karma is conjunct his north node, his natal north node. And here's Donald Trump's chart with the solar eclipse on December 14th, the day the Electoral College meets to cast their votes. This total solar eclipse occurs exactly 10 minutes of arc from an opposition to his natal sun, and just over 2 degrees from his natal moon. He was born on a full moon eclipse, as we said, and this solar one occurs with a nodal return for him, indicating to me a date with destiny. Progressed Uranus is conjunct his natal sun, and transiting Mercury is right on his natal south node. In addition to all this, transiting Neptune is opposite transiting Vesta, right here, which is conjunct his progressed moon. The moon rules his 12th house, natal asteroid karma, and the natal Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is being opposed by transiting Pluto. Again, Venus rules his 10th and 3rd, and transiting Venus is conjunct Biden's Sun-Venus conjunction and square his Leo ascendant. Progressed Venus is getting a trine from the transiting North Node, sextile the South Node too, and asteroid Karma is conjunct progressed Atlantis right here by his ascendant, actually at the midpoint of his ascendant and progressed Sun. Here you can see the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn, called the Great Conjunction, which is also within orb of a conjunction with Pallas and asteroids. Here's Pallas right here, and asteroids Isis and Osiris, all in early Aquarius. Asteroid Phaeton and Lilith are conjunct Pluto within a degree. The following day, on the 22nd, Mars is conjunct Eris at 23 degrees Aries for the third and final go, this time anyway. And asteroid Isis will be conjunct asteroid Osiris at 4 degrees Aquarius at 53 minutes. Jupiter and Saturn meet up every 20 years, and for the last 200 years, the meeting has been in Earth signs. For the next 200 years, they will be in the air element. Toward the end of the 200-year cycle, there is one conjunction as a sort of preview in the element that follows. Then 20 years later is the final conjunction of the element of the preceding 200 years. On December 21st, 2020, this great conjunction hails the move to the new air meetups, as at least 3 cycles complete within 2 days and begin anew, accompanied by asteroid Angel, conjunct the North Node, the South Node, rather. After an extended period of time in Aries, due to a retrograde, asteroid Coronis will still have one more meeting with Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter, and then we'll meet up with Uranus in Taurus eventually. Asteroid Asclepia, which talks of healing, is conjunct the vertex. So this could be signaling that the healing is finally beginning. Okay, that's what I've got for now.
All right, Sue, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And now let's transition over to Mitch Lewis again.
Hi,
Hi.
we're all still here.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
I can see you.
Okay. What am I not doing right here? Share screen. 1 second. Sorry.
There we go.
My goodness me.
Go ahead.
Okay. Very quickly, I'm going to go over the pandemic. In March 1918, a few soldiers died in Kansas, and they shipped the rest of them over to the trenches in France. At the time that that pandemic began, Saturn, the planet of restriction and limitations, was conjunct Neptune, which rules infectious diseases. And the first wave of the pandemic was relatively mild. It took a little time for it to incubate, of course, in the trenches. In October, as they were getting ready to wind the war down, and millions of soldiers went all over the world carrying this horrible flu with them, Saturn was now in opposition to Uranus. Completely different energy. Beginning of COVID-19, we have Neptune in sextile to Jupiter. And while the sextiles are considered benefics, I don't look at transits that way. I think this represents Jupiter equals Neptune. Trines and sextiles are easier to manipulate and to use, but it's the same energy. And so a pandemic exploded, and it was terrible. And of course, we've seen the waves and so on and so forth. Now we're getting ready for Saturn to square Uranus. And in 1918, Saturn opposed Uranus as the second wave kicked in and killed 50 million people in 6 months. Now, I don't expect the same kind of reaction, because we know better about medicine, and we should be able to get a vaccine and so on and so forth. But there was very little doubt in my mind that we were not going to see this wave that we're seeing now. I was lecturing about this. This is actually from a lecture from over a year ago, or perhaps not quite a year ago, but just as the pandemic was beginning. Many of you don't know, I was on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange for about 12 or 14 years, trading with astrology. I was an astroeconomist.
Cool.
And I ran a newsletter down there. I made a living. It was absolutely amazing. And I got a chance to learn more about astrology by watching it on a global way every single day. I mean, I stood on the floor of the exchange with my analyst badge, and I saw these huge screens of coffee and sugar and cocoa and Deutschmarks and oil and all of these things. And I had my little ephemeris calendars, my Jim Maynard calendars. And I traded constantly. It was, quite an interesting thing. And 9/11 took the wind out of my sales and everybody else's. And I was down there the day before 9/11. And I had been predicting a terrorist attack on a number of different shows based on Manhattan's chart, not New York City's. Manhattan first had its government February 2nd, 1653, I think. I don't have the chart in front of me. And the Pluto-Saturn opposition, which is what set off the 9/11, was very, very obvious on Manhattan's chart. And remember, they didn't blow up Queens or Brooklyn or Staten Island. It was Manhattan. Anyway, when I do my lectures on the financial markets, which I do quite regularly, I use some of these charts, and I just wanted to show you a few of them. Here's the Dow from 1900 to 2018. And, it goes up 80% of the time. Here are the different recessions that we had to deal with. Here's a recession of 1905. It took 19 years for the Dow to come back to where it was. Here's the Great Depression. It took 25 years for the markets, the Dow or the New York Stock Exchange, they all pretty much follow each other to happen. Here is the Great Recession of the 70s. Those of you who are old enough to remember it, you could get 12% interest on your checking account. Inflation was insane. It'd be nice to get back now, right? And here's the last recession that took 6 years for the markets to come back to where they were. It was a fairly short-lived recession. And now, of course, I don't have the chart right here for it, but we are in another recession. What some people are calling a V recovery, but what a lot of people are referring to as a K recovery. People that have money are making a fortune. People that don't have money are going in the exact opposite direction. And much of what we are dealing with now, we live in a material world. We don't live in an ashram. You don't eat a bowl of rice and meditate all day. We have bills to pay. We have to get our dry cleaning, take care of the dog, pay the rent, eat. And so economics has a great deal to do with humanity. How we define the economics, there's the bigger question, of course. I used to jokingly say in my lectures that I'm 10 degrees to the left of Che Guevara. Then I had to explain to people who Che Guevara was because they're too young to remember. I think that capitalism, the way we are dealing with it, is a cannibalistic system. Companies come in and eat each other up alive. And who loses? The workers. And I don't want to get too much into my politics here, again, 10 minutes, but when we divide this 100 years of the markets into 20-year cycles, it looks much different. Here's 1900 to 1920. Here's the crash of 04. And here, where are we? Over here, this is the beginning of the First World War. My God, the markets took a tumble. And then what happens immediately? Well, war is very good for finances. It's very good for the economy. Everybody went back to work and the markets ran all the way up. Here is the influenza. This is what happened with the influenza. And then right away, it starts to go back up again. Here is 1920 to 1940. Here's the crash of 1929. Doesn't look so terrible. But what it did psychologically was it wiped out the equivalent today of trillions of dollars, and more to the point, this was a 10-year bull market where everybody was getting rich. Everybody, waitresses were rich in the stock. Everybody made money in the stock market. Here's the crash of 1931. The difference isn't just in terms of the depth of it, which took out what we call support. All along the line, there was nothing there. Nothing stopped it. It just went totally down. And this is the reason why Franklin Roosevelt was elected. It was because the stock market completely collapsed. Hoover did nothing about it, and so politics changed. As Daniel and some of you were explaining earlier, this is what happens. We are in cycles, and cycles have to take place. And you're absolutely right. If people don't change until they're in pain. I've been smoking for 35 years. I'm not going to give it up. Well, sir, we found a little spot on your lung. Oh, my God. When I wake up now, it hurts. I'm going to give up smoking. Society is nothing. We are individuals. We are a collective. We are, as Leo Tolstoy once said, everyone talks about changing the world. No one talks about changing themselves. So when I look at these patterns in economics, I also see the patterns not only in the collective, but in the individual. Here's the stock market. The New York Stock Exchange was begun on May 17th, which, by the way, was Dennis Hopper's birthday. It's another story. In 1792, about a dozen stockbrokers went out onto Wall Street, outside of 40 Wall Street, under a buttonwood tree. So this is called the Buttonwood Agreement. And they decided, well, why should Europe have stock markets? Why don't we have our own? And so they decided to begin, and they invented the New York Stock Exchange. Very interesting chart. Again, we haven't got the time to go into this. I'll do that perhaps at another time, or I'm about to do a webinar about the economics and the history of the stock market, the whole thing. It takes 2 hours to go through all this stuff. But this is a very interesting aspect, very interesting chart. It's got Jupiter conjunct Neptune in opposition to the Moon and Saturn. My goodness, what a very powerful thing. And every time that there's a stock market crash, the New York Stock Exchange's chart gets hit, America's chart gets hit. A lot of different things happen that are recurring events. And I go all the way back to the tulip bulb, a bubble of the 1600s, and I show you, whatever. It's fascinating, especially for people who are interested in history and astrology, because it's unbelievable how accurate it is. And Saturn is in square to Uranus in the crash of 1931. And these two planets are in hard aspect to each other almost always when there is a stock market crash. So I predicted the crash of 08 more than a year in advance, within a week of its occurrence, because Saturn was in opposition to Uranus right on the New York Stock Exchange. 18 degrees. Again, I'm not going to go into this too much. I just thought this might interest you guys and tickle your fancy a little bit. Robert Kennedy was assassinated when solar arc-directed Uranus was exactly opposite his Mars, within, I mean, exact to the minute, and on top of his ascendant. There were other aspects too. For example, solar arc-directed Mars was on his Mercury, and he was shot. By transit, you will also see a lot of stuff that occurs here. Mars is in opposition by transit to his Mercury, again, violence. Donald Trump has solar arc-directed, and this, like I said earlier, this is the birth time that I prefer for Donald Trump. Solar arc-directed Uranus is exactly on top of his ascendant. 4 years ago, when he was elected, Uranus was applying to his Mars. That added to everything else that was happening in his charts. Now it has moved along, the river has moved, and it is on top of his ascendant. Donald Trump is not going to be reelected. I believe something could happen to him. The fact that he got COVID was not a surprise. The fact that he recovered from it so quickly, that was more of a surprise. But I think we're going to see some rather interesting things happen to Mr. Trump over the next year or so, as that solar arc-directed Uranus crosses his ascendant. It's going to take just about a year, assuming the birth time is right, you know, a few minutes here and there. The nurse held you, the watch was wrong, whatever it is. And when I saw this, and I saw Robert Kennedy's assassination, because I do, you know, we got nothing else to do with our lives. We sit in front of computers and we punch up 1,000 charts. It fascinated me. And so I started to predict in my lectures that something would happen to Donald Trump, and I did not feel that he was going to get reelected, and I don't. I could be wrong, whatever. If I am, write me and tell me I'm wrong. But I don't see it. And I think that something is going to happen major to him, and it very well may include the courts. Now, because you know, as we've been talking, the Supreme Court and Daniel, that was absolutely great about Warren. I have said that many times. Chief Justice Warren was a right-winger, and he turned completely the other way, and we see that sometimes. Lyndon Johnson was, by all thoughts, a bigot. And he got into the White House, and he becomes, and he does more for civil rights than any president since Lincoln. So people do change. Okay, my time is just about up. Anyway, all of this connects. It's all of a piece. Whether we're looking at the stock markets, we're looking at the election, we're looking at our own personal lives, it is all of a piece, which is what makes astrology so wonderful. If you do the work, if you study it, if you focus and you dig, you'll get your answers. Anyway, so thank you very much for the time. It's been great. And now it's time to give the microphone over to someone else.
Oh, thank you so much, Mitch. Fascinating, fascinating. Oh, I love all of that information. Oh, but I'm not supposed to talk. Okay. Michaela, we're back to you.
I guess the November 3rd, 2020 chart, that's number 4. The election day chart. No, that's the inauguration. Yeah, it's the last one. Number 4. Okay, so you know, result time, because obviously we don't know when there might be a result, but this is based on 2012, which, as I say, is an important date because that preceded the precessional shift on the solstice. So on that date, Obama was re-elected, but his results came in, as his results, the chart went into 0 degrees Leo. So he had Aquarius on the descendant, and of course he's a Leo too. So, but anyway, so that's just, it's interesting because you get at the same sort of time, and this is set for, that was 10 p.m. then in Washington, D.C. on the 3rd. And this is set for 10:12 p.m. So, whether that happens or not, but also I thought I'd set it for that because not only that, it puts Saturn right on the descendant. And as you can see, it's in 26 degrees Capricorn, which means that Mercury, which goes direct, is at 26 degrees, just about 26 degrees going direct in Libra. So it's square Saturn. So that to me indicates there could be a big problem with the results, even though you don't know that it's but something could happen at that time, even if it's not declared what happens. But there's definitely something going on, and I think there'd be a problem with it. I think it's an indication of huge holdups. In that chart, of course, it does highlight Mars because it's right up there in the midheaven in this chart. In Aries, doing that square to all the Capricorn planets that's been going on, and then of course later it's going to go on to its conjunction with Uranus in the inauguration. Perhaps we can put the inauguration chart up now. That's the next one, the one you just had. But anyway, yeah, that's the next one. But in any case, we all know this, the inauguration chart looks pretty horrendous with that Mars conjunct Uranus. Mars, as I say, will get to Uranus by that time. But in between that, it seems like every single moon phase, or most of the moon phases, the major moon phases all have, okay, I'll show, there's a possible scenario that there was this very interesting article in the Atlantic in September, and it gives a hypothesis about the election that Donald Trump could actually throw the election into chaos and subvert as a result, which he has hinted at already, as we know. So they wrote this article, and it's saying what would happen if he did that. And it just seems like every single, as I say, moon phase leading up to the inauguration is, as they describe here, each phase, it's very complicated, and I'll possibly go into it astrologically next time. But what's very interesting, major dates on that, like the in the period between the election and the inauguration is it's called the interregnum, and it comprises of 79 days. And this is carefully bonded by law. It says, among them are the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. This year, it's December 14th. And as we know, there's a solar eclipse on December 14th, and it is at that crucial degree again of 23 Sagittarius, which, by the way, I did note in the inauguration, Trump's inauguration, as I said, Saturn conjuncted it, but it does have the Sabian symbol that denotes possible xenophobia. It's about immigration, it's about boundaries, and it's about they're my boundaries, keep out, which are obviously it's perfect for the wall and Trump's whole his whole idea of keeping everything out except invading himself, everything else. Anyway, so like the virus. Anyway, so the December 14th, it says, when the electors meet in all 50 states and the District of Columbia to cast their ballots for president. What it says in a nutshell is, if he decided to say that it was a fake election, and this does complicate things because of the mail ballots, I'll finish there, then he could throw it all into complete disarray and that whole process would be kicked off, culminating on the inauguration day. Whoa. So, yeah.
Woo. Okay. Am I getting your cue that you're done, or do you have more?
I think I've got just be cued. Linda, am
Yeah,
I done?
you've got 3 more minutes if you'd like.
Okay. Oh, fine. Okay, I'll continue that. Okay, so it gets very complicated. Then it says what could happen. Then it goes on, and I'll you know, 13th of January, for instance, is a new moon. That new moon is on 23 degrees Capricorn, right on Pluto. Every date that they give, actually, 3rd of January, 26th of January, they're all moon phases, every single one of them, when there's a different part of this process. And they're all very, very difficult, in very difficult aspect. It says at some point, at that point, Mike Pence could even step in to say that and he happens to be the, oh dear, I've got all my notes here. He happens to be the leader of something in the House. You know, yeah, which means he's in control of something, that he could actually say that, you know, I declare that Trump is still the president, even if the vote didn't. So it's a very complicated business, and it could be pandemonium. But what's scary is the transits do make that very possible. They do seem to back that up. And as I say, I'll go into it the next time a bit more. Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Michaela.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Ari and your little cutie. Oh, we need some of that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at some things here. I'm going to share my screen. Will you take it off? Okay. So we also have to appreciate that whenever we have these big planetary cycles, historically, we actually see a lot of the big changes happen after the exact alignment. You know, after the conjunction of Pluto-Uranus in the 60s. That's when really things started to take off. Like, that's when the whole new cycle began. And there's no doubt about it. Just let's look at what we got going on here. Right now we have Neptune moving in opposition to Neptune. So it's still gibbous. And that's what we feel, right? It's like Neptune in the 10th house. I prefer this chart. To me, this feels the most aligned in terms of transits and correlations that I've seen over the years. Neptune in the 10th house, obviously there's this dissolving of our faith and meaning in the whole democratic structure. I mean, more people today than ever believe that the whole system is just, you know, unreliable. It doesn't feel honest. It doesn't have a lot of integrity. There's deceit everywhere. There's like a growing momentum for big systemic fundamental change. And Neptune's moving into the 11th, which of course represents liberation and the radical departure from the constructs that we've crystallized, opposing the natal Neptune. So I feel we're moving to this era where there is yet to be seen a profound disillusion of the constructs and the systems that we've known for a very long time. At the same time, we have Pluto moving towards a new phase with Pluto. So it's still balsamic, it's still completing. So we're feeling that balsamic energy, that nostalgia for what is yet to come, but not quite yet there. Nostalgia for, that's an interesting statement. Never said that before. We're not there and we can't rush it. And so we have, you know, this whole desire to start afresh, push the reset button. And it seems we keep on getting drawn back to same old, same old. The systemic change isn't actually quite happening yet. And of course, this resonates strongly with the ideologies and all the strong beliefs and dogmas that we find all around. So they're both in that not yet there phase, which is just meaningful to know. I mean, we see what's happening now, looking at the transits, and this is true whatever chart house system you use for the United States. The two most outer planets that we tend to work with are 2 years away from their exact angular alignment, opposition and conjunction. So let's look into the year 2022, which is interestingly when we have the next voting cycle. So this year, Pluto has been moving over Pluto. It'll go over Pluto again for the last time in 2023. And Neptune over the entire year was moving over Neptune in opposition to itself. So 2022 and then a little bit of 2023 really does symbolize the height of these Neptune-Pluto cycles. I think it's meaningful to note that they're happening probably in the entire history of this country. I haven't searched this. We've never had Neptune and Pluto kind of coming into alignment with itself in the same year to such a strong, significant degree. And of course, we have Jupiter in 2022 moving over the midheaven at that time. So to me, what this says in context to what we see is yet to unfold, what's happening now is just actually still the unfolding. We're getting ready for a radical change, a radical shift. And what happens during speaking to the Neptune, what happens during the gibbous phase is consciousness becomes increasingly aware of how much yet needs to happen. And so at that very juncture before the exact opposition, there's a lot of frenetic energy. There's a lot of chaos. There's often a strong feeling of disorganization. And we see that politically, you know, Neptune in Virgo, healthcare, Neptune just in the 10th and 11th house, right? A society that is good for everyone, that is thinking about the ideals of all people, all walks of life, no matter what your economic status, no matter what community you come from. We have all these elements legislatively, healthcare, COVID, how we vote, the whole political system, Supreme Court, Neptune in the 10th house. Things don't feel very stable or reliable. And even if changes are made, there's that thought, well, you know, maybe abortions will become illegal, even though we've already had a Supreme Court ruling saying that it's not illegal, right? There's no faith in precedent. There's no faith in that 10th house reality right now where Neptune currently is. So it's like everything can topple, everything can change. It feels very unstable, like there's a lot of work to do, and it feels very disorganized. To me, this feels very gibbous in the sense of things aren't settled. It's keeping us on our toes. So there's some sort of breaking point that we see is yet to happen. And from the point of view of Neptune in Pisces, opposite Neptune in Virgo, it is a spiritualization. Neptune in the 11th, how we're living in respect in relation to all of us being equals, all of us being deserving and worthy. And again, like we do this greater political work by starting with how are we living and how are we treating our neighbors? How are we in relation to the people around us that don't have the same means or needs that we have? Are we living in a way where we're creating our own little bubble and separating ourselves from the love and the unity and the togetherness that is innate to life? You know, so these are really things to think about in our own personal transformation. And just that Pluto, balsamic to Pluto, again, we're also in that balsamic phase. It's like Jeffrey Wolf Green spoke about that tension, the balsamic phase very much being, we, especially at the very end of it, we want to be in the new cycle. And there can be this deep anxiety because we're not there yet and we have to complete the old cycle. So we're facing psychological content, material, collectively, individually, that we just have to purge. You know, all this Capricornian Pluto stuff, we know it. We see the story and there's a lot more. And for us individually, Jeff Green often said, we do not know the extent to which we are all conditioned. We're generally unaware of the extent of our conditioning. So to ride these times with a lot of grace and trust, and, you know, this is a powerful time that we're living in. By the time we go to the new cycle, it's like, all right, new cycle. Even then, it's like, what are we going to do with this? So I just want to say, I feel like a lot's going on right now, and that Neptune square in the nodes is really powerful. But these cycles say we're actually still just getting started. You know, the bigger fundamental changes are really, we're still completing this chapter. As big as this particular moment is, I think the freshness is still yet to be seen. So that's my little talk here.
Thank you, Ari. Okay, well, we have completed all of our talks from the panel today, and I just want to find out if there's anyone any viewers who may have any questions, or maybe any questions that speakers have of one another. I know I've been talking during a lot of this, so. Looks like we're all set. So.
Yeah, well, Mitchell, I just appreciated what you're saying about the Mercury stationing direct. Yeah, I haven't heard anyone say that, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I actually haven't thought about it until you said it. I'm like, yeah, I totally agree.
Laurie, when I look at it, you know, of course, there's so much hyperbole. Everybody's so excited and so upset about everything that filtering through it all. That's why I use such sparse charts when I'm lecturing. I don't put a lot of stuff in. I put in the main planets, the nodes, Chiron, and I leave everything else out because I want to focus on something. And when I took a look at the election day, and everybody's saying, "Oh, Mercury's going to turn around. It's going to be so confusing." That's not been my experience over decades of doing this stuff. Usually, when Mercury turns back around, yes, we have the shadow period and all the rest of that, but things tend to secrets are revealed. Things are there. And so I'm inclined to think that we are going to know. At the very least, we're going to know what should be. And of course, Trump being Trump, he'll decide whether he wants to scream and carry on and run to the Supreme Court and go to Bill Barr and have him arrest everybody in America because they didn't vote for him. But that is my feeling. And by the way, I noticed you used the Gemini ascendant. I know I go through this with a lot of my friends in astrology. We have this debate back and forth all the time, but everybody today, I just want to say, this was great. You all had amazing stuff to talk about and wonderful things, and everybody has their own different perspective of it. And I thought it was great fun. Mm-hmm. So, Ari and Sue and everybody, Stacie, thank you for monitoring it.
I just want to throw something else into the hopper if I can before we end this.
Yes.
10 days after the election, we have the third Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. The next day, Mars turns direct. And in the time between the election and the inauguration, we have an eclipse and then 2 eclipses that follow it. So I wouldn't count any chickens.
Well, you know that Trump is going to do everything he possibly can to upset things. He's not going to leave. He's going to pass laws left and right and pardon everybody, pardon himself, his children, the dog. Well, he doesn't have a dog, I'm sorry.
A wounded animal is the most dangerous.
Of course, absolutely true. Well, you see how crazy he's getting now anyway. Right. I mean, wait till tonight. I can't wait for tonight. There should be some debate, no matter what the outcome of it is. Certainly going to be. It's going to be more fun than watching, old Frasier's, I think.
He's going to do what he did last time. He's just going to shout without the mic. That's what he's going to do.
Exactly. He doesn't need. If he brought an old style megaphone, that would be hilarious. If he really had a sense of humor, that's what he would do.
I just want to throw a little jocularity out there too. This came off of Facebook. I didn't make this up. But when Trump had COVID, the Democrats found God and the Republicans found science.
I don't know if they found it yet, really.
Oh, please. It's comedy. Mel Brooks said something very smart. He said the difference between comedy and tragedy. He says tragedy is if I cut my finger. Comedy is if you fall in an open sewer and die. It didn't happen to me, so it's funny. If this was happening to somebody else, we would say, oh my God, how funny. But it's happening to our country. So it's much more difficult to laugh about.
It is indeed. Well, I think that we have gained a lot of very interesting information. A lot of, oh, look at that little cutie.
Ari, what's your baby's name?
Ella Rose. It's spelled with an H at the end.
Hello, Ella.
Hi, Ella. Oh,
no idea what we're doing.
She's a little showstopper there.
In 4 years from now, she's going to be teaching Ari how to do stuff.
I know, probably. Probably. Yes, well, I think if there's anything that we've all kind of come together on, it's that there are a lot of intense dynamics going on right now. There's a lot of ways that this can go, but we all seem to agree that the way to really navigate this is to be in the moment, Daniel, you said that at the very beginning. I so agree. You know, being willing to go with the flow and fight where we need to fight, because sometimes that's called for, right? You know, it's our democracy. And the debates will be occurring tonight. What is it, 8 p.m. Eastern?
Yep. And Stacie, remember the old saying, freedom is never free.
Indeed.
You have to fight for it in every generation.
Indeed. And it's relative. It is.
Democracy is an active verb.
Yeah, so I thank you, everyone. We're going to be coming back on Thursday, October 29th. This series is going to last up to Inauguration Day. So we look forward to you next time, and thank you, everyone. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Thank you, Stacie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Ew.
Thank you.